Welcome back. In this presentation, David Fawbert, OBE, talks about Seamus Heaney's The Haw Lantern. It's the poet's seventh collection, published by Faber and Faber in 1987. What follows are David Fawbert's words. In 1987, Seamus Heaney is a highly cultured, sensitive, Northern Irish Catholic approaching 50. He has settled in Dublin with his wife Marie, with a teaching contract at Harvard University and invitations from around the globe. By nature, he is modest, sociable, and self-doubting. He is a magician with words and the subtle shades of meaning that they enclose. He is gifted with a photographic memory. His Haw Lantern collection is intellectually demanding, thoughtful, and innovative. It ponders, measures, selects, and judges. Station Island in 1984 had enabled him to examine matters of conscience and discard a whole load of what he called hampering stuff. Seeing things was to come later in 1991. Haw Lantern will satisfy a new writerly need, that of sifting through primary experience and crediting the marvels he failed to see first time around. Heaney identified loss of faiths as one of the main concerns of the book, particularly religious faith. Catholicism retained its rigid monolithic presence, while the priest administering viaticum to Heaney's dying mother went at it hammer and tongs. The senior Catholic cleric of the shooting script stood stonily impassive. It was unsurprising then that the fishing lure it dangled to entice Heaney to readopt his faith in the spoon bait meets with an emphatic no. Heaney has lost confidence too in finding a patriotic figure capable of uniting very divided Irish communities, either as a civilian in Wolfe Tone or the future saint of the disappearing island. Heaney perceives Irish identity as being undermined from both inside and out, and he hates it. However, he does accept that, like the boundary god of the poem Tenderness, he stands in midstream, tasked with keeping speech alive between contending parties and discourses. Tenderness replaces the ponies and traps of old Castle Dawson with the age of steam. The stone grinder regrets the passing of age-old rustic practices. The old team depicts Edwardian Castle Dawson soccer players, now just memories. The milk factory alludes to a polluting mid-Ulster business now closed. A shooting stick presents a screenplay mourning the decline of Gaeltacht Irish in the face of Anglophone opportunistic Irish capitalism. And from the canton of expectation suggests that generational and global changes made it all irresistible. A cluster of poems indicates Heaney affected by disappearance. The terra firma of the disappearing island, Robert Fitzgerald's elegized soul travelling out of all knowing. Irish sand messages threatened by the tide in a shooting script, and the soul of his mother-in-law, Eileen Devlin, carried up to heaven as part of the wishing tree. Above all, the deaths of Heaney's mother Margaret in 1984 and father Paddy in 1986 left him marked by the loss of those who had shared his life since the day that he was born. Clearances comprise 8 cathartic sonnets celebrating his mother's strengths and principles and commemorating the sacred domestic moment of her death. Her passing created a new sense of absence and revealed to the family their father's rarely expressed devotion, and in his turn, Paddy Heaney's taciturn down-to-earthiness is elegized in the stone verdict. Heaney excels at moments of love and grief. The summer of lost Rachel transfigures Brother Hugh's daughter, who was killed in childhood, into a beckoning mid-Ulster water spirit. The birth of his niece Daisy is celebrated with a very secular memento in The Peacock's Feather. 2 love poems are dedicated to his wife Marie. Grotus and Coventina extends the devotion of a Roman legionary soldier on Hadrian's Wall to a water supply issue at Glanmore Cottage. And in Holding Course, Heaney's self-doubting nature questions his skills as a lover. Entirely novel to the collection are 4 narratives, each beginning with "from the." They resemble missives from foreign correspondents in mysterious or dangerous elsewhere locations. In Frontier of Writing, the humiliated, angry Catholic poet caught in an army roadblock requires the squawk of clearance to take his life forward. It's symbolic of the stages he goes through to clear away the rubbish obstructing his artistic creativity. Republic of Conscience, commissioned by Amnesty International, imagines a place where examination of conscience cannot be avoided. It's somewhere restrictions and control from above have no place, and where leaders are humble and accountable, and where involvement in a cause equals total commitment to it. Land of the Unspoken compares an enlightened country, unmistakably France, with an Irish heritage cherished by Heaney but violated past and present by leaders seeking to foment division, to impose narrow political imperatives and enrich themselves, and quite content to prolong Irish dislocation. Canton of Experience uses a succession of verbal moods to follow the passivity of the Northern Irish Catholic community that Heaney lived in as a child into his own generation, which has benefited from educational opportunity and rode roughshod over the old values. It was seduced by hyped promises of gratification. So Heaney's search for a restorative figure settles on an earthbound Norse model, a Thor, not a Noah. To my mind, the Haw Lantern's most notable feature is a clutch of metaphysical parables. They are moral and spiritual lessons visible to Heaney's inquiring hindsight. The parables generate a wealth of classical citations. They're not aimed to show off highbrow scholarship, but instead for their own contextual sake. The title poem adapts the ripened fruit of the hawthorn to legendary Greek Diogenes in his search for a single honest Athenian. Do I meet the criteria of true Irishman, Heaney wonders? An optical trick allows the fruit lantern to shine in his face, its thorn to test his blood, and Heaney submits to scrutiny. The results are not conclusive. Heaney understands the workings of inner doubt. A daylight art juxtaposes classical philosopher Socrates facing death by poisoning, and a poet who has devoted a lifetime to creating works of art. Both wonder whether they are in the right trade. In Parable Island, Heaney yearns for an Irishness that others may have placed beyond recovery from the post-Celtic centres of learning and early Christianity to archaeologists, and the Irish themselves from leaders to the intellectually challenged. The Disappearing Hand observes an anonymous St. Brendan landing on a homonym island seeking to establish a settlement, only to discover it wasn't an island at all. Heaney provides an ironic blend of fancy and truth in search of the real thing. Hailstones ponders the memory of ice pellets that melted to nothing in a youngster's chapped hand and created a burning absence. In retrospect, it was a welling up of sensibility in a child who one day would become a Nobel laureate. Alphabets, commissioned at Harvard, makes a major contribution, rotating around the stages of Heaney's personal development from Anahorish Primary School and St. Columba's College to the most prestigious lecture theatres in the world. It underlined his gift for languages, it accepted his footling significance in the wider scheme of things, and refreshed the childhood memory of a message troweled into a moss-born gable that had him on the road to poetry. But to my mind, the star of the whole show is the Mud Vision. It's a dramatic monologue embedded in memories of an old island and gesturing to an island still in the making. It recounts the collision between images of devotion and the trappings of modernity, rebuking the Irish for growing apart from themselves, as ever too cautious to take the plunge. Heaney throws in a semi-religious visitation to compete with the miraculous appearances claimed by awestruck Catholic women and hyped up by the local media. His spinning mud wheel takes on its own aura and imposes itself on everything it touches, creating a mudman sect that reinforces the need for penitence and worships around the mucky places. The mud vision disappears as suddenly as it arrived, and what lasting impact does it leave behind? None. Everything is the same as before, the same rural dilapidation, the same mindsets that condemn Ireland to its global reputation for stubborn short-sightedness. And so, to the Coda, Heaney has cleverly prepared his ground for the riddle. It is the concluding and conclusive metaphor for the finely balanced challenges he faces to produce works of poetry, the accrued wizardry of 6 collections, the alchemy of transformation, and in short, the handwork that produces the handiwork. Thanks for watching, and do enjoy the critical analysis that follows. David Fawbert, June the 5th, 2020.